Hello, and welcome to It's a Women's World. I'm your host, Irina Dubinskaya. Our show spotlights powerful women which dare to make a difference. From Amsterdam to the New Zealand, women today are taking the challenges of business and leadership head on and are becoming successful entrepreneurs. Our guest today is Deborah Bishop. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Arena. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. You will never outperform your own self-image. Let's start with that.
Sure. That is my, what we call my point of view, or POV. That is the platform I build everything I do from performance to mentorship and programs. And it really has to do with the fact that you cannot outperform your own idea of yourself, your own beliefs. And most of the time, what's tough about this scenario is that a lot of what we believe to be true, we are not even aware of, because they've been part of us for so long. They're literally running back here on autopilot. And for us, the experience is sort of, well, that's just how life is, or that's just who I am, or that's just how it goes. And so I always say, if you hear any of that conversation or ever hear yourself saying, well, that's just always the way it goes, that's the big neon arrow pointing in the direction of work you could do that could truly change the trajectory of your life.
Interesting. So for our viewers, let me introduce you, Reverend Deborah Bishop, keynote performer, inner image authority, and acceleration specialist. Here is the one question we all deserve to answer. Would you rather face the end of your life wishing you'd done it differently, or feeling deep peace knowing you absolutely played full out?
That's a question that has a lot of meaning to me. I'm going through my parents' last chapter of life, really. I call a spade, and I am witnessing, not just from them, but from those around them as well that are going through different varying ages, but that I'm witnessing what it means to spend that time feeling like you did it, versus like you did the things you wanted to do, and you were out there making a difference in the world, or you were the best for your family, and the difference in just how the health and maintenance that you do for yourself, like the quality of life, it's astronomically, there's a massive scale here of difference between the people who have accomplished and achieved and feel good and peaceful about where they're at, and then those who literally are being just haunted by the things they've never really addressed, the healing they've never really done, and the chances that they never took. And so that's a very, very personal and somewhat new question that I put on my website, because I really realized at the end of the day, the end of the life, end of your life, it doesn't matter how much money you made, although money is obviously important. And it doesn't really matter if you created this massive legacy or not. What matters is, do you feel complete? Do you feel like you got what you came for? Do you feel like you got to do what you really wanted to do? Because the desire and the need for that, the drive for that, doesn't disappear. And it becomes the thing that you either celebrate at that point, or, like I said, haunts you. And it's devastating to see how it can haunt people that are in that last chapter, and who candidly aren't really going to be able to do a whole lot about it.
Wow, fascinating.
It's a situation where I believe, anyway, I've based my practice and my life on this at this point, and that is that we're all here to master this life. I don't really think we're here to take up space, you know, or to just sort of arrive and decide, oh, okay, I'm gonna, you know, go after this fortune or go be CEO of this company. All of that's great, you know, but I do believe we are here to master this life, which to me means that we become the absolute best person, the best being that we can be. And when it comes to making a difference and having success, which is all individual anyway, everybody's idea of success is unique. That's where we really have our greatest expansion or our greatest experience, is when we are really getting back to who am I really? What am I truly capable of? What do I feel called to do? And then how do I do that? How do I get out there in the world and actually do that?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Give me a second, please. So when I was researching your work, I came out with what you called the primal survival impulse. Mm-hmm. What is this? How does it affect our life?
Well, we could break it down really simply. The primal survival impulse, first of all, primal is ancient, right? Very, very old. Survival is what we are attempting to do from the minute that we take our first breath, you know, and we are welcome to this world. We are automatically put into a place where our nervous system kicks into survival mode. And that impulse is that place of when it's like, oh, this is a moment that I have to survive. I have to step back. I can't take that chance. This could be scary. Sort of like how you would feel if you were looking into beautiful, calm blue water and it's a hot day and you're in a boat off the Caribbean and you're like, oh, I want to dive in, and you see a fin. You know, your primal survival impulse is like, right? And so when that happens in that scenario, your primal survival impulse actually serves you, because it goes ding, 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 not safe, don't get in the water. That's good, right? But where it does not serve you is in life, when it's about growing, taking a chance, taking a leap, being out there, you know, building a business, building a dream, stepping into philanthropy. And because you're pushing past what you know and you're moving into the unknown, the primal survival impulse pushes back and goes, well, wait a minute, we don't know how to do that. So therefore, we don't know if it's safe. So therefore, we're really going to push back and tell you not to go there. And so that's when people have great ideas, but they stay for years in conversation about that great idea and they never take action, and they can't quite figure out why. They're like waiting for the right circumstance, and there will never be the right circumstance, because it will always be scary enough that it'll push them back into survival mode. This is where the primal survival impulse is really working against us. But it's not coming from any kind of maniacal place. It's literally coming from a belief system that says that's not safe. Don't go there. And survival by definition does not mean anything other than we are here living and breathing. So survival has nothing to do with quality of life. And the survival primal impulse has nothing to do with quality of life. It just has to do with the belief that says stay safe, and it'll be okay. Even if your life is in pain and in chaos, if that's what you've learned how to survive in, your primal survival impulse will always fight to keep you there.
So, Deborah, would you please tell me, what is personal and authentic power?
Personal, unending, authentic power is what you get to when you get beyond the primal survival impulse, and you move past places of fear and resistance, and you really tap into the true essence of yourself. from a kind of a perspective that's that maybe a wee bit spiritual, whatever, we are part of this amazing energy source, and we are limited in our own right because, you know, we are physically bound by skin. This is the limitation that we have as body. But that said, we are tapped into an unlimited energy source. And when you move past the resistances and the belief systems that would stop you and shut you down, what ends up happening is you move into a place where you start to kind of be in harmony with, there's no other way to describe it, kind of the energy of creation, if you will, where who you're being, how you're speaking is like stepping into the flow, and you're moving with the flow. It ceases to be hard. It becomes something that is far more effortless, and it's unending. It's a resource that's available to you. We always have it. We just don't know how to access it. So it's the thing when you are creating something, when you are growing your business, when you are building a vision, it is the energy that we can tap into that will allow us to get up early when we didn't really get a lot of sleep the night before, that will allow us to step out of our comfort zone and say something we might not have said before because we're used to being at the back of the room and not the front of the room. So it's a very potent part of mastery, because it's when we truly step into the truth of who we are that we literally step into this place, this flow, this never-ending source of power. It's ours to have. And that's when you can hear people that will talk about, yeah, you know, I want it, I see it, I take some steps and it happens. It's there. I don't even have to, you know, do much for it. You know, I just think and focus and there it is. These are people that are in that flow. They're in their personal, unending, authentic power because they are genuinely tapped into who they are here to be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So what for you is living as a leader?
Living as a leader, I do a lot of development around leadership with teams and individuals and so forth, and I speak on it. And, you know, it's a really great question because what is a leader really? You know, aside from somebody that's maybe 3 steps ahead of you or 3 steps ahead of me so they can lead me, they're 3 steps ahead. And that's a great tip, everybody. You do not have to have vast amounts of information and have all these degrees and be, you know, 20 years down the path in order to actually lead somebody. You really only need to be like 3 steps ahead. And what you've learned in those 3 steps is really valuable to the people that you're leading. Living as a leader is literally my measuring stick for whether or not I'm truly being who I would choose to be in the world. Because we lead by example, whether we realize it, whether we intend on it, whether we are intentionally doing it or not, we lead by example. So living as a leader to me is living the authentic life that you would choose to lead if you could go, okay, if I was the best person I could possibly be, if I was the most successful person I could possibly be, if I was of the highest service that I could possibly be, who would I be? How would I be? How would I walk into a room? How would I shake somebody's hand? You know, how would I show up? And living as a leader is very much that concept. It's holding yourself to that level of accountability, which is not easy to do because you don't always feel like it. There are times when I just kind of want to blame things on other things. And, you know, and the truth is, as long as you're playing the blame game, nothing is ever going to move forward, because the minute that you point out into the world and say that's the reason, you are completely disabling yourself. You are untapping from your power. You are pulling back into your primal survival impulse. You're resisting all of the things that could flow to you. So living as a leader to me is living your life fully expressed, on purpose. And that leads to it being very profitable on every level. And that's not just money, that's health, that's relationships. So profitable on every level. And truly waking up in the morning and putting your head down at night, knowing that, you know, not everything may have gone right, because, you know, not everything will, but that you stepped up to the best of your ability.
Good. Now, when you were talking about being a best version of yourself and performing in your peak, you mentioned the resistance. So what is the root of this resistance which prevents us from doing great things?
I will give you as abridged a version of this as I can. This is the root of the work that I do for anybody that actually works with me. And there's a methodology to this. So the Reader's Digest version of the root of all resistance is what I call the foundational lie. And I think I've mentioned it a couple of times in the conversation. The foundational lie really comes from a place in time when, as human beings, we are basically utterly dependent on circumstances around us, our parents, our economic status, whatever. When we are born, we are literally utterly dependent. It's just the way it is. And if we are not taken care of, we're not going to do very, very well. Well, in that process, we are little sponges because we're here to survive, right? We're little sponges. We're going to learn everything we possibly can learn, and that's what's going to ensure our survival. So our focus is 100% on being the center of our own universe and absorbing everything we possibly can, and everything that we absorb, we learn from and we take on as if it's absolutely the truth. Okay, because we know no different. We know no different. And from the time of inception through to about 6 to 7 years of age, we literally have our brain on one channel. Cognitively, we cannot perceive as anything outside of us not somehow being at that we're not at cause for it. We don't look at other situations and go, oh, that has nothing to do with me. No, everything has something to do with us. So, I mean, anybody who's ever been around a little child will know that that child will go as far and as fast as they possibly can, because there's no such thing as a fence or a boundary. It's all theirs. You know, they will take whatever they can get their hands on, because they don't get that it belongs to somebody else. It's all theirs. If they like somebody, they will literally crawl in the lap of that person, because that's just the way that it is. And it's just because they literally do feel that they are at the center of the universe, and that's kind of where they need to be in order to develop. And it's a beautiful time because there's this openness and this innocence, and there is really no resistance. And this is why you can teach a baby like 7 languages and they will learn it, because there is zero sort of distraction like what we have today, because we have all these other things that are happening. At the age of about 6 to 7, depending on the development of the child, the brain starts to turn on another channel. And at that stage, the child actually starts to realize that there are things happening outside of themselves that have nothing whatsoever to do with them. So up until that point, that doesn't exist. So what's important to understand about this is, when, whatever the event may be, a child for the very first time does not feel safe. Remember, we get back to primal survival, does not feel safe. This is where the foundational lie happens very quickly for that child. So a very, very small example of this. We have Sarah playing in her playpen, happy as a little clam, tripping the light fantastic. Her imagination is amazing and she's having a great time. Mom and dad are fighting in the kitchen. And for her, that's been the soundtrack of her life. There's nothing out of the norm for that. So whatever circumstances a baby's born into, that's really their normal. So as an adult, we might go, but for them, it's just what they know. But for some reason, during this particular argument, there's a smash, right? A dish gets broken. Now, for little Sarah, who's out there playing, she's fine with the arguing. She doesn't even notice it. But all of a sudden, there's a crash. And what happens for her is her nervous system goes, and as soon as that happens, she does not feel safe. Something interfered with her normal. And all of a sudden, she's aware of the loud voices in the kitchen. All of a sudden, it gets scary. So she pulls right out of that beautiful space she was in, and she's, what do I do? And it's not just what do I do, because since she cannot look at the circumstance like you or I could and say, oh, dad's been out of work for 2 years, mom's holding down 2 jobs, the house is a mess, they're fighting, got nothing to do with me, let me go back and play. Sarah has no ability to do that. She is literally, whatever effect is happening, she sees herself as cause. So therefore, Sarah's thing is, what happened? And the next question is, what did I do wrong? Like, what happened? Where am I? What did I do wrong? And of course, for her, she was playing. She was having a great time. She was way out there. So the first thing Sarah learns is, you know what? You need to be more aware of what's happening, right? You can't be that. Don't get that creative. Don't get too playful, or don't use your imagination too much. Because if you're out there, then you're not present here and something bad could happen. So that's the first thing she learns. The next thing that Sarah's nervous system wants her to do is to restore safety as quickly as possible, because the cortisol's coursing through her system, right? How do I feel safe again? Well, her first impulse, she's scared. Okay, that's loud. She gets loud, right? That's one of the choices she can make. How do I do? I'll get loud. So she starts to get loud. She starts to cry. She starts to scream. Well, in most cases, in the majority of the cases, the parents are going to stop because their child is now screaming. And one or both are going to go over. There's exceptions to all of this, but for the most part, one or both are going to go over. They're going to pick her up and they're going to comfort her. And what happens? All of a sudden, Sarah starts to feel safe again. So where the foundational lie is now born is Sarah goes, what did I learn from this experience? And what Sarah learned from this experience is she needs to be somebody that's aware, right? She can't go off and have too much fun. She needs to be somebody that's aware. And if something is not feeling good, if she doesn't feel safe, there's something she doesn't understand going on, then what she needs to do is grab the attention, get louder than it or whatever it takes, so the attention gets to be on her, and now everything's going to be okay. And for her at that stage, at 2 or 3 years of age, that works perfectly. But the problem with the foundational lie is it wires into your brain as if that's the truth of your primal survival impulse. And now as she gets older, we are nothing if not self-fulfilled prophecies. So the story she keeps telling herself reinforces the idea that that's who she needs to be. And then suddenly she's an adult who can't quite figure out why people don't want to be around her, because she's the person who is constantly grabbing for attention, because that's the only way she feels safe.
I actually was asked to thank you for the talk you gave in the office a week ago. And we've been using your technique when you do put on the list all things you don't want and turn them in the things you do want. And it did work. Is it what you call in the focus forward technique? Or
yes, that is the root of the focus forward technique, is to understand what you're wanting and then who you would be if you had it, and then giving gratitude, because there's several steps to it. And the focus forward technique is that's at the root. And then the focus forward technique is also how to take that further and develop conversations around it. And because we talk about the past all the time, we always get together and we talk about what happened and who did what to who, and we don't really talk about where we're headed and how we're getting there and what it feels like to be there. And admittedly, that's not always the most appropriate conversation. However, I do believe that it should be a lot more utilized. We should have this conversation a lot more, because we're missing it. We're talking about what was, we're not talking about what is or what will be. So the focus forward technique is about taking that exercise you're talking about and fleshing it out into a full-fledged conversation and exercises that help us to stay focused forward, as opposed to referring to the past because something seems familiar or similar. And that's something we all have to watch out for. We have a tendency to think we know what's going on because it's similar to something we've experienced before, and we go automatically back to the last experience we had that was kind of like that, and then we draw our assessments from that place, and we just basically blew it, because we're no longer present. We're living in the past and we're bringing all of that with us. and somebody says something and it triggers that emotion for them. They've never really healed from it, and all of a sudden their spouse doesn't even stand a chance, because they're not even they're talking back with their ex-boyfriend or girlfriend of 20 years ago. We can all go by the way of this idea of thinking we know what we're talking about. One of the things that I found very essential for me personally is I do a lot of I'm physically fit, and I do a lot of what I call HIIT workouts, which are high interval intensity training. Now, you don't have to be fit to do this. This is like the whole principle of it is you bring your heart rate up, and then you let your heart rate come down, and you bring your heart rate up and let your heart rate come down. You can do that by just stepping up on the first stair for a couple minutes and then waiting for a minute, and then stepping up on the first stair for a couple minutes and waiting for a minute. This does not have to be a workout. But what it does do when you let your heart rate go up and down like that for like 10 minutes or 20 minutes is it not only boosts your metabolism, does all those good things, it actually increases the serotonin and dopamine in the brain. So when you increase your serotonin and dopamine, you automatically shift yourself into this place that's like, life is good. I feel good. And to me, at this stage in my life, that's what I get my motivation from, that kicks me into gear. It gives me the activation that I need to keep me inspired. The other side of it is also living my passion, which is not always easy to do. I teach it, and it's not, simple and easy are not related, guys. The principles I teach are incredibly simple. Implementing them is not easy. And even for me, there are days when, you know what, binge watching on Netflix sounds really appealing. I just admit, and there are times when that's okay. You can actually give yourself a day off. You're allowed. But, to keep yourself in the game, one of the things you've got to be connected to, otherwise you won't stay in the game. And that is your greatest source of inspiration. And a lot of people will say, well, how do I know that? I don't know what that is. And they're right. They probably don't, because we're not really encouraged to be tapped into that. In fact, we are often discouraged from that. And so I heard this from an amazing speaker a long time ago, Andrew Harvey is his name, and I will be forever grateful. And he said, if you tap into your greatest pain, if you're willing to tap into that thing which is so painful to you, you don't want to look at it, on the other side of that is your greatest passion.
Thank you so much for inspirational interview, Deborah.
My pleasure.
And that's all for today's show. I would love to thank Deborah for inspiring us with her interview. And you can see all her information in our website, deararena.com. And if you would like to be our guest and tell your story of success, send me your name, short bio, and why you would be a great lesson for others to follow to deararena.com/interviews. This broadcast was sponsored by Global Real Estate Education Network, live daily real estate education that works as hard as you do. See all what they have to offer at learnfromgreen.com. Ciao.